Hey friends, welcome back. So I bought the IQON AG15 skates about 6 months ago, and today I'm going to be doing a final review on them. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys an overview of the skate, telling you what I like, what I maybe didn't like about the various components that make up the skate, and then I'm going to be telling you my final thoughts and then who I think this skate is best for. The IQON AG15 is Montre Livingston's pro skate. It runs about $650, and I think the price is starting to drop a little bit on these. It is a skinned carbon fiber skate, which means that it is heat moldable, and it comes with the MyFit Prime liner, Create Original frames with a 58mm 88A flat setup. And then it also has a brand new cuff that has 4-way rockerability or adjustability. And then comes with kind of a revised lacing system at the 45 area. And then one thing to note about the sizing on these is because it is carbon fiber, they come in individual shell lengths. So that means it's basically a full foot size. So it would be like 9 to 9 to 9.5 would fit in this, and then 10, 10.5, 11, 11.5, etc. And then one thing about the cuff too is that this kind of makes the skate a mix between the AG10 and the AG20, which is probably why it's called the AG15, because I think it was I forget which one it was, but the carbon fiber had a carbon fiber cuff, the plastic boot had a plastic cuff, and this one is carbon boot with plastic cuff. Alright, so talk about the stock wheels. I don't have them anymore, but they were absolute dog shit and terrible. Absolutely hated them. They lasted me maybe 2 sessions, and then I cored them, put the next set on because it was a flat setup and I ride anti-rocker, and cored them again. If you saw my video where I went to Crowder Comp out in Raleigh, I did a Royale down a ledge, landed, split a wheel in half. It's the first time that it's ever happened to me. For the price point, I would expect some better wheels on this. And, I thought it was kind of odd that you have a 58mm 88A setup on Create Originals as flat, because that just seems like suicide. It's a super grippy wheel, very soft, and Create Originals don't have a lot of wheel bite protection. So for me, that just wouldn't work. What I did like about the Win wheels was that they were really grippy and soft, and that was really nice for just cruising around, skating, taking landings. But again, there were some durability issues with the wheels. Didn't last very long, so when you spend $650 on a skate, you would want some better wheels. So the IQONs, they come with Create Original frames, which is what Montre Livingston rides. I've done a review on these, so I'm not going to get into the specifics. If you want to see what my thoughts were on the frame, you should go check out that review. Overall, good frame for riding anti-rocker. I wouldn't personally ride them for flat. Some people do. One thing I noticed is that they improved some of the hardware on this, so it's not as soft as the metal. So that's kind of nice. And, I tend to like the Kaiser Fluid 4s just a little better because it has a shorter wheelbase. So in my opinion, it fits the boots that are my foot size a little better, and not so train tracky when I'm skating. But that's the Create Original frames. Super solid frame, and it's honestly a bang for the buck if that's a frame that you like. All right, so let's talk about the things that I didn't like with the MyFit Prime liners. So first thing was that if you saw my video from my first session on these, is I got really bad blisters, and it basically like broke the skin. Had to take like a good week and a half off to allow myself to heal up, so I wouldn't like keep tearing them open. And it's kind of a soul crushing feeling after spending $650 on it because I was worried they wouldn't fit or work. But once I heat molded the liners and the skates, I didn't have any more problems. One thing that I don't like about these is how stinky they get. I sweat quite a bit, and I usually leave these air out and dry, and I try and alternate skates. So like if I skate these one day, then the next day out I'm using my blanks just to allow them to dry, but they still get really stinky. So I end up having to use an antimicrobial spray just to help try and kill any bacteria in there, because that's usually what causes odors. But I mean, these things just stink really bad. All right, so let's talk about what I do like about the liners. Honestly, I absolutely love the way these liners feel. They are very thin, kind of dense foam, so there's not really any packing in as you skate them. So like once they are molded to your foot and you got them to fit, that's how it stays. And I've been riding them for 6 months, and haven't really noticed any packing in or looseness with my skates. So I think that is a really big pro. And as you can see, the liners look like they're still brand new, even though I've skated them for 6 months. There's not any wearing from the boot that's translated through to the liners, which usually happens, especially with carbon fiber, because it can rub through the inside liner and then it starts tearing up the liners. The other thing that I like is the shock absorption in these. So it has this really thick heel pad in the liner, and then in the footbed, it's also got a really nice shock absorption. And so that is really good if you've got bad knees, kind of like what I do, and it just feels like you're landing on pillows. One other thing that I like about these liners is because this is such a custom fit and true fit, they don't move around at all. So I think that's a really good pro as well, is that everything just sucks right onto your foot and then feels good. So that's kind of my thoughts on the liner. So let's talk about the things that I didn't like. As I mentioned, when I first session had really bad blisters in these things, I searched around for heat molding the AG15s, and there just wasn't any information online, because like if you look at, the previous IQONs, they have heat molding instructions. But I was kind of torn, because I'm like, well, the sole plate, it has foam on it. Do I take the sole plate off? Do I need to take the laces out? What about the liner? Is there anything I need to do about the cuff? And honestly, for me, it was just a bunch of trial and error to say like, okay, yeah, that's probably okay, that's probably not okay. And it was kind of like, am I going to fuck up these $650 skates? Maybe. But I ended up heat molding them. I took off the frames, left the sole plates on, peeled out the laces, and then put the liners in. And I want to say I set my oven to like 212 degrees Fahrenheit and then let it bake until, the carbon fiber was warm enough where I could, kind of push on it with my fingers and feel that it was starting to get pliable. But, obviously front of the skate warms up a lot faster than the back of the skate where there's more material. So I was a little concerned to like, well, am I gonna turn this to goop too while I'm trying to get the back to heat up, because that's the area where I got some blisters, and so I really wanted it to form to my foot. So that was kind of a downside for me. I would say another thing that is a downside, but this is kind of new to all Power Slide, Mesmer, IQON products, is just the new Kaiser buckle. If you haven't heard by now, it's trash. It basically has this metal buckle on the outside, and then on the inside it's plastic where it attaches to the boot. But if you hit this at all, it will crack and shear right at a bolt attachment to the boot, and then it's worthless. I contacted Kaiser. They sent me exactly the same ones, and I didn't even put them on. I just, I ordered another set of like the older Kaiser buckles that are all plastic with the metal attachment back to the boot. No problem since. So, trash. And let's see. One thing that I thought's kind of weird is these carrying loops are made from like this very thin, wide material, but that sits very flat. And so when you're trying to like pick them up, you have to use like two hands, one to open the loop and one to grab it. And it can just make it cumbersome to grab the skates if your other hand is full. It's not a big complaint, but it's just something that's a little weird is, why wouldn't you use just something like a little thicker that stays open so it's easier to grab? Future feedback for the next gen skates is the way I look at it. Sole plates, overall didn't really have any issues with the sole plates. I did notice that the sole plates tend to collect maybe a little bit of wax, and once you start getting some wax buildup, they start to slow down. So every few weeks I just take like a putty knife and scrape off the wax, and they slide really well. So not really a complaint, but just something that needs maintenance is the way I look at it. The stock frame bolts, I noticed when I my first session, is that they were kind of poking up into my foot, and I realized that they were maybe just a hair too long, but if you go to the next bolt size down, it ends up being just a hair too short. So I just ended up, going to Ace Hardware, buying some thin washers, and then putting it on all the frame bolts, and that just helped relieve the pressure on the foot. So if you're feeling that on these skates, consider buying some washers. Let's see. One other thing, laces. Typically the laces that come with these only come up to the 45 strap, and they don't extend all the way up. For me, I like a lace that integrates all the way up and then integrates with the liner, because I like to lock my foot into the liner, leave the cuff a little loose, and then rely on the flex of the liner to help me, with tricks. And that's just an old thing from when I skated Rems, to have, a somewhat loose fitting but secure enough so I don't snap my ankle. But anyway, for the price of these, I would think that they could throw in, a longer set of laces, and, even if it costs like $1 more, just, include it in there so you have the option. I did notice, so with the new sole plates, they fasten to the bottom of the boot. And I did notice that, like, when you take these off, you'll see that the sole plates are drilled, but then where they cast the receivers for the bolts don't line up 100% perfectly. So you end up with some bolts that kind of end up at an angle, and you could tell that they're a little wonky on the fit up. And then, some of the stitching just doesn't line up perfectly. Pretty common with skates that are handmade, which is usually carbon, so it's not a big deal for me. But if you've got OCD and you're very picky about having something that's symmetrical, just be aware that you could end up with some aesthetic nuances, as I like to call it. And then, I noticed some people complain about, a gap with the sole plates. For me, that's not something that I notice. When you look at the boot down, I don't even see the end of the sole plate really. So I don't notice any gap. But it also depends on what your foot size is too, because I don't think they have a sole plate that matches every shell size. So if you find that you're on the short end of a sole plate, you may see just a little bit of a gap there. Um, but it's not the end of the world. Life will go on. One other thing, I love this puffy tongue, but as you can see, like with the cuff placement and then where this puffy tongue is, it's really hard to get to those laces. And so if you're trying to get in there and get it really tightened up, or if you're even trying to loosen it after a session, it could be a little cumbersome. But again, it just takes a little more time, some patience, and not a big deal. So that's kind of the things that I disliked about it. I would say most of these are all minor nuances, except for the blistering, the heat molding, and the shitty Kaiser buckle. All right, so this is my favorite part. Let's get to the things that I really like about these skates. So first is absolutely love the aesthetic of these with the puffy tongue. It is just such a, I don't know, for me it is just such a fun nostalgic look, and it really reminds me of old Remedies or the TRS like Broscow style skates where it was like the skins with big thick puffy tongues and you'd leave the flaps open. What a look. What a time to be alive. I did like that these are heat moldable. That's one thing about heat molding is that, if you've got, some funkiness to your feet, being able to heat them up, mold it to relieve pressure is a huge selling point. Yeah, it comes with a higher price tag, but just that customizability piece is big for people who need something like that. Once I heat molded it, I did not have any issues. So, so that I thought was really good. I like the cuffs too. The new cuffs, they're flexy, but supportive. It sounds kind of like a oxymoron. And then I like that they're adjustable because, when I first tried them on, I could feel like a little bit of pronation where my feet were kicking in. So I just rotated the inside and outside until I felt like that went away and I felt like I got more support on the inside. And then, that's been sticking through since. Overall frames that I ride with these, I rode these with Create Originals, the Kaiser Fluid 4s, and FR Street frames. All of them felt really good on these. I really like that it has the wide sole plate with a big backside plate because it's really forgiving for learning tricks. It's great for learning new stuff. And, it's great for just confidence when you're riding because nothing's worse than missing a top side and sliding out. Because this is carbon fiber and the shell fits your foot length, they are very responsive and gives you very solid power transfer when skating. So that's something that I really liked. And, I mentioned sizing a bit ago. So I'm a Mondo 275 and, I ordered I think it was 43. I can't verify because the print on the liner is all worn off now, but I want to say it's 43. And they were absolutely perfect for my foot size. They don't feel like they're too big. Once the liners broke in, didn't feel like my foot was swimming around or moving around, which, is something that happens with me when you have puffier liners, is the liners pack in and then your foot starts floating around and then you realize how much room in a shell there really is. Overall, really, really impressed with this skate. So let's get into final thoughts. Overall, I think this is an amazing skate that is responsive and, it is great for grinding. And I just love the customized fit on this. I think the price tag is a bit steep for this. But once you factor in, the cost of the frames, wheels, you would end up about that price point anyway. Although I would say that, if you sold the skate as a boot only, give you the option to put whatever frame you want on it and whatever wheels you want on it, you would end up with a better setup because, getting better wheels from than what comes stock, but also you get that little bit of customization for building it the way you want to. Something to consider. Wish they would have had an option for boot only, but again, if you don't like the frames, you can always sell them off, but you're never going to make the money back on the wheels because they're just trash. All right, so who is this skate best for? Honestly, this skate is best for someone who is looking for a forgiving skate with wide soles, whether you're old and you miss tricks or you just want the security of being able to land stuff and, have that responsiveness and power transfer. This is also for someone who wants a skate that is heat moldable and customizable to get the best fit. If you've got any kind of odd features with your feet and need a skate to be able to heat mold and press out to make it fit, this would be a great skate for you. And then this would also be a great skate for someone who has some past injuries that they need to cater to, and if you're a little sensitive to hard and just hard shock absorption and landings, this is a really good skate because it does have so much shock absorption. It's like landing on pillows. So it makes, doing jumps and transfers really, really good if you've got bad knees. And I would say 6 months skating these, I've only noticed just a little bit of that cushion loss, and that hasn't been until maybe about the last month. So hopefully you take that information for what it's worth. I would say that there's probably only one person this skate is not for, and that is just someone who does not want to spend the money. Specifically, like, if you're fine with cheaper skates, you don't need any features on this, and you don't want to spend the money, it's kind of not the skate for you. But, for the reasons I mentioned previously, if those are features you're looking for, this may be an investment that you should look into. All right, well, that wraps up the review on these skates. Hopefully I covered everything about it, but if I missed something, if you've got any questions or you've ridden these and have feedback, I would love to hear it or hear what your questions are. I'm always happy to take time, respond to everyone that reaches out to me. Thank you all for checking in, and we'll catch you next time.